Chosen one. The FBI is asking, who trained you? Your strategy was too precise to be self-taught. What if the precision you've been quietly using to navigate your life wasn't something you learned, but something you were given? What if the way you read a room, sense danger before it arrives, or make the exact right move at the exact right moment isn't luck, isn't coincidence, and definitely isn't something you taught yourself alone? I want you to stop and actually consider this seriously for a moment, because the instincts you've been relying on your whole life were too calculated, too well-timed, too consistently accurate to have come from nowhere. Someone or something trained you, and it's time you finally understood who. You've probably brushed it off before, the way you seem to know things before they happen. The way you can walk into a complicated situation and instinctively understand exactly how to handle it, even when nobody around you can figure out why you're so calm, so precise, so unusually capable under pressure. And instead of recognizing that as a gift, you've probably questioned it, wondered if you're overthinking, wondered if people will think you're strange for noticing patterns nobody else seems to catch. You've downplayed your own sharpness because you didn't understand where it came from. Have you ever felt like your own instincts were too accurate to be accidental, but too unexplainable to talk about openly? The moment someone else noticed your precisions. Think about a moment when someone else pointed out how strategic you were, how calm you stayed in chaos, how precisely you handled something that would have overwhelmed most people. Maybe they said it jokingly. Maybe they said it with genuine confusion, wondering out loud who taught you to think that way. That moment might have felt flattering, but underneath it, there was probably a quieter question forming in your own mind. Where did this actually come from? Has someone else's shock at your capability ever made you question your own understanding of where that capability originated? Why self-taught doesn't fully explain what you carry. Here's something worth examining honestly. Some skills genuinely come from practice, trial, and error. But certain instincts, the kind that arrive fully formed, precise from the very beginning, without years of visible trial and error behind them, don't fit that same explanation. If you've noticed a level of precision in yourself that seems to have existed before you consciously built it, that's worth paying attention to rather than dismissing. Some things you carry were not built through repetition. They were placed in you, ready before you even needed them. Have you noticed certain instincts in yourself that felt fully developed from the start, rather than slowly built over time? If this is landing somewhere real in you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 goes even deeper into exactly where this kind of precision actually comes from. Why your calm under pressure isn't normal. And that's the point. Think about the moments where everyone else around you was panicking, and you remained strangely, almost unnervingly calm, able to think clearly while others couldn't, able to make the right call while others hesitated. That kind of steadiness under real pressure is rare. Most people have to train intensely for years to develop it, and even then, many never fully master it. If it simply existed in you, quietly, without that same intense external training, it's worth asking where it actually originated. Has your calm under pressure ever surprised even you, as if it came from somewhere deeper than conscious effort? The pattern recognition you've always had, even as a child. Think back to childhood for a moment. Did you notice patterns other kids missed? Did you sense tension in a room before anyone said a word? Did you understand people's true intentions faster than seemed developmentally normal for your age? Those early signs often get dismissed as simply being a sensitive or observant child. But looking back now, with the precision you carry as an adult, those early patterns start to look less like coincidence and more like early evidence of something being cultivated in you, long before you were old enough to recognize it yourself. What early signs of unusual perception or precision do you remember from your childhood that you never fully explained? Why being misunderstood is often the price of being precise. Here's something worth naming honestly. People who operate with unusual precision often get labeled as intense, intimidating, or difficult to read, simply because most people aren't used to encountering that level of clarity and strategic thinking in everyday interactions. If you've been called too much, too intense, or too calculated by people who couldn't quite process how you think, that reaction says more about the rarity of your capability than it does about anything wrong with you. Have you been misunderstood or labeled as intimidating simply because your precision made other people uncomfortable? If this resonates with you, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 2 dives deeper into where this precision actually comes from and what it's preparing you for. Why the people trained to nurture patterns are noticing. You think about the specific detail behind this entire premise. It's not random people questioning your capability. It's the kind of people whose entire profession revolves around detecting patterns, training, and strategic precision in others. When someone whose job is to recognize trained behavior looks at you and asks who taught you to operate this way, that's not a casual observation. That's professional recognition of something real, something significant enough to catch attention from people who rarely get impressed by accident. Has someone whose expertise involves recognizing skill or training ever reacted to your capability with genuine surprise or curiosity? Why this precision might be protecting you more than you realize. Here's something worth considering seriously. The sharp instincts, the precise timing, the ability to read situations accurately. All of that might not just be an interesting personality trait. It might be actively protecting you, keeping you out of danger you never consciously registered, guiding you toward the right decisions before you fully understood why they were right. If that's true, this precision isn't just impressive. It's functional, purposeful, and worth taking far more seriously than you have been. Could your instinctive precision have been quietly protecting you from danger or bad decisions your entire life, without you consciously realizing it? You were never simply self-taught in the way people assume. Something in you was cultivated with a level of precision that mirrors intentional training, even without the visible process most people associate with skill development. That precision has protected you, guided you, and set you apart in ways you're only now beginning to fully understand. If you accepted that this precision was placed in you deliberately rather than something you simply stumbled into, how differently would you view your own capability moving forward? You've spent so long questioning or downplaying instincts that were actually rare, precise, and remarkably consistent. That precision was never an accident. It was never simply self-taught in the ordinary sense. Something or someone cultivated it in you long before you consciously understood its value. This is only part 1. Part 2 goes deeper into exactly where this kind of precision originates and what it means for the path still ahead of you. If this message reached something real in you tonight, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because part 2 continues exactly where this left off. You were trained. Now it's time to find out by whom. We talked about the precision you carry that doesn't fit the ordinary explanation of self-taught skill. The calm under pressure, the pattern recognition that started in childhood, the instincts that arrived already sharp without the visible years of trial and error most people need. So today, let's go further. If you weren't simply self-taught, where did this actually come from? What kind of training produces instincts this precise, without ever showing up as formal instruction you can point back to? Are you ready to trace this back to its actual source? Here's what makes this so disorienting. When you try to explain your own precision to other people, you can't fully articulate where it came from. There's no specific class, no specific mentor, no clear moment where someone sat you down and taught you to think this way. That gap between having the skill and being unable to explain its origin can feel unsettling, almost like you're carrying something you don't fully own. Have you ever struggled to explain where your own sharpest instincts actually came from, even to yourself? Why some training happens without a classroom? Here's something worth understanding clearly. Not all training looks like formal instruction. Some of the most precise capabilities in a person are shaped through repeated exposure to difficulty, through environments that demanded sharp perception simply to survive, through seasons of life that quietly forced you to develop pattern recognition long before you had language for what you were building. That kind of training doesn't come with a certificate. It comes with scars, with lessons learned the hard way, with instincts sharpened by necessity rather than classroom instruction. Could your precision have been trained not through formal education, but through difficult seasons of life that demanded sharp perception simply to survive them? Why difficult childhoods often protes the sharpest adults think about this honestly. Children who grew up needing to read a room accurately, sensing a parent's mood shift, predicting conflict before it happened, learning to navigate unpredictable environments, often develop an intensely precise kind of perception that stays with them permanently into adulthood. That precision wasn't taught in a classroom. It was forged through necessity, through an environment that required sharp instincts simply to stay safe. If your childhood required you to read situations accurately just to protect yourself, that experience may be exactly where this precision was first cultivated. Did your early environment require you to develop sharp perception simply to navigate safely through unpredictable situations? If this is resonating with something real in your own story, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because part 3 goes even deeper into how this precision continues to shape your entire life. Why some people are trained by life itself, not by institutions. Here's a powerful reframe worth considering. Some of the most capable, precise people in the world were never trained by formal institutions at all. They were trained by life itself, by hardship, by loss, by circumstances that demanded resilience and sharp thinking long before any official curriculum could have prepared them. That kind of training is often invisible to outside observers, because there's no diploma, no certification, nothing tangible to point to. But the results speak for themselves, clearly and undeniably, in exactly the kind of precision you carry. Could your entire life, rather than any single teacher or institution, have been the actual training ground for the precision you now carry? Why your intuition might be the accumulation of everything you've survived. Here's something worth sitting with. Intuition isn't magic. It's often the compressed result of everything you've experienced, processed unconsciously, and stored as pattern recognition your mind can access instantly, without you having to consciously think through every step. Every difficult situation you survived, every relationship that taught you something painful, every moment you had to think quickly under real pressure, all of it contributed to a database inside you that now operates faster than conscious thought. That's not something you were formally taught. That's something you built, moment by moment, through everything you've lived through. Have you considered that your sharpest instincts might simply be the accumulated wisdom of everything you've already survived, compressed into something that feels instant? Why being fought to grow up fast often builds unusual capability if you were forced to take on responsibility earlier than most people your age. Caring for someone, managing a difficult situation alone, navigating adult problems while still young. That experience often builds a kind of capability that looks remarkable to people who had a more protected, gradual path to adulthood. What feels to you like simply surviving your circumstances often looks, to outside observers, like extraordinary strategic thinking and maturity. You weren't given a childhood that allowed for slow, gentle skill building. You were given circumstances that demanded rapid, precise adaptation, and that demand is exactly what built the capability people now notice in you. Were you forced to grow up faster than your peers, developing capability out of necessity rather than gradual, protected learning? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exploring exactly what this precision means for your future. Why your precision feels unfamiliar, even to you. Here's something worth naming honestly. Even you might not fully recognize the precision you carry, because it's been with you so consistently that it simply feels normal, unremarkable, just how you naturally operate. It's often other people, encountering your instincts for the first time, who notice how unusual and precise your thinking actually is. You've been living inside your own capability for so long that you've lost the outside perspective needed to see how rare it actually is. Has your own precision ever felt completely ordinary to you, simply because you've never known anything different? Why this kind of training produce something more valuable than formal education ever could? Here's something worth considering with real appreciation. Skills learned through survival, through necessity, through genuinely difficult life experience, often run deeper and hold up more reliably under real pressure than skills learned purely through formal theoretical education. Someone who learned strategic thinking through actual hardship tends to apply it more naturally, more instinctively, than someone who only learned the theory without ever being tested by real consequences. Your training, whatever shape it actually took, produced something that holds up under genuine pressure, and that's more valuable than most formal education ever manages to build. Does it change how you view your own capability, realizing that training born from real hardship often produces deeper skill than formal education alone? Truth for today: you were never simply self-taught in the shallow sense people assume. Your precision was built through the accumulation of everything you've survived: difficult circumstances, early responsibility, environments that demanded sharp perception just to stay safe. That kind of training doesn't come with a certificate, but it produces something formal education rarely manages to replicate: instinct that holds up reliably under real, unpredictable pressure. If you finally recognized everything you've survived as the actual source of your precision, how differently would you value your own journey up to this point? You've learned something today that reframes your entire story. that some of the most precise capability in the world comes not from classrooms, but from life itself, from difficulty, from necessity, from everything you've already survived and integrated into instinct. Your training was real. It just didn't look the way you expected training to look. There's more ahead. Part 3 goes into what this precision is actually preparing you for, and how to finally trust it fully instead of questioning where it came from. If this message is helping you see yourself more clearly, subscribe now, because Part 3 continues exactly where this left off. You were trained by life itself. Now trust what it built in you. What if you've spent your whole life catching lies in real time, so effortlessly, that you forgot how genuinely rare that ability actually is? What if the split second where you just know, before the person even finishes talking, before any evidence exists, before anyone else in the room even suspects anything, isn't a coincidence, but a fully developed skill operating faster than your conscious mind can explain? Think about the last time you knew, instantly, that someone was lying to you. Not guessed, not suspected, knew. Where do you think that certainty actually comes from? You've probably learned to keep this to yourself, haven't you? The moments where you sensed dishonesty immediately, clearly, undeniably, while everyone else around you nodded along, completely convinced. Saying it out loud sometimes makes you sound paranoid, or arrogant, or like you're accusing someone without proof. So you stay quiet, watching the lie unfold, carrying the weight of knowing something nobody else seems to notice. That isolation, knowing the truth while everyone else believes the performance, is exhausting in a way most people never have to experience. Have you ever known someone was lying with complete certainty, long before you had any actual proof to justify that certainty? Why your body catches lies before your mind even processes. Why here's something worth understanding clearly. Detecting dishonesty this precisely isn't magic, and it isn't guessing. It's the result of your nervous system processing dozens of microsignals simultaneously. A fractional hesitation before an answer, a mismatch between tone and words, an inconsistency between what someone says and how their body actually moves while saying it. Most people register maybe one or two of those signals consciously. You're likely processing all of them at once, instantly, without even realizing you're doing it. That's not something taught in a single afternoon. That's a fully developed skill, running quietly in the background of your mind at all times. Have you ever caught a lie and only later been able to identify the specific detail that gave it away? Why this skill often comes from growing up around dishonesty. Here's a pattern worth examining honestly. People who develop this level of lie detection almost always grew up in an environment where dishonesty had real consequences for them personally. A household where trusting the wrong version of events meant real danger, disappointment, or harm. Children in those environments learn, out of necessity, to read beneath the surface of what's being said, because taking words at face value simply wasn't safe. That survival skill doesn't disappear once childhood ends. It becomes a permanent part of how you process every single conversation for the rest of your life. Did you grow up in an environment where believing the wrong version of events actually had real consequences for you? If this is resonating with something real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 5 goes even deeper into how this exact skill has shaped every relationship in your life. Why you've always been the one people don't try to fool for long. Think about your relationships honestly. Do people who once tried to manipulate or deceive you eventually give up, almost like they realized fairly quickly it simply wasn't going to work on you? That's not coincidence. People who are skilled at manipulation are often just as skilled at recognizing who's difficult to manipulate. If dishonest people have consistently steered away from trying to deceive you for long, that's strong evidence of exactly how sharp your detection actually is, even if nobody's ever named it directly. Have you noticed that manipulative people tend to give up trying to deceive you faster than they do with other people around you? Why this skill sometimes makes you feel isolated in conversations. Here's something worth naming honestly. Knowing someone is lying, while everyone else in the room believes them, creates a very specific, uncomfortable kind of loneliness. You're not just processing the dishonesty. You're processing the fact that you can't easily prove it, that saying something might make you look difficult or suspicious, and that speaking up might cost you socially in ways that staying quiet won't. That isolation is a real cost of carrying this ability, one that deserves acknowledgement rather than dismissal. Have you felt isolated in moments where you clearly saw dishonesty that everyone else around you completely missed? Why this ability doesn't mean you have to call everyone out immediately. Here's an important distinction worth making. Recognizing a lie and confronting it immediately are two completely different decisions, and you're allowed to separate them. Sometimes the wisest move is simply knowing the truth internally, protecting yourself accordingly, without engaging in a confrontation that won't change the other person's behavior anyway. Your detection ability gives you information. It doesn't obligate you to use that information publicly every single time. Can you separate recognizing a lie internally from feeling obligated to confront it out loud every time it happens? If this is landing somewhere real, that's exactly why this series exists. Subscribe now, because Part 5 goes deeper into using this ability wisely instead of exhaustingly. Why this skill has protected you from dangers you never even saw consider. How many times throughout your life this exact ability has quietly steered you away from relationships, deals, or situations that would have genuinely harmed you, simply because something felt off before you had concrete proof. That instinct, dismissed at the time as mere caution, might have actually been detailed, precise lie detection operating below conscious awareness, protecting you from consequences you never even had to experience because you avoided the situation entirely. How many bad situations do you think this exact skill has quietly protected you from throughout your life, without you ever fully realizing it? Why you should stop apologizing for trusting yourself on this. Here's something worth releasing completely. The habit of apologizing, explaining, or feeling guilty for trusting your own read on someone, even when you can't fully articulate why. You don't owe anyone a fully detailed explanation every time your instincts pick up on dishonesty. Trusting yourself here isn't paranoia. It's respecting a skill that's been accurate for you, consistently, across your entire life. Are you ready to stop apologizing for trusting an instinct that has already proven itself right so many times before? The final truth for today: your ability to detect dishonesty instantly isn't a coincidence, and it isn't something ordinary. It's a precise, highly developed skill, likely forged through necessity, protecting you consistently, even when you couldn't always explain exactly how. That skill deserves your trust, your respect, and your willingness to stop questioning something that has already proven, time and time again, that it knows exactly what it's doing. If you fully trusted this ability from now on, without needing to justify or explain it to anyone, how much would that change the way you move through every relationship in your life? You've learned something today that validates one of the sharpest, most consistently accurate instincts you carry. That your lie detection ability isn't random, isn't paranoia, and isn't something to downplay or apologize for. It's a real, developed skill, likely forged through necessity, protecting you far more than you've ever fully given it credit for. Stay sharp. Stay trusting of what you already know. This ability has never actually failed you. If this message reached something real in you today, don't let it end here. Subscribe now, because more of these messages are coming exactly when you need them most. You always knew. Now finally trust it completely.